Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that sounds, well, pretty much impossible. We're going to talk about how our world is facing the problem of too many people and the problem of not enough people at the exact same time. How does that even work? Let's get into it. Okay, so first things first. Right now, there are 8.1 billion of us on this planet. That number has just skyrocketed in the last century. And, in a lot of ways, that's a success story. It's thanks to incredible advances in medicine and food and sanitation that have let people live longer, healthier lives.
But, and this is a huge but, at the very same time, the populations of 61 different countries are actually expected to shrink by 2050. And I don't just mean the growth is slowing down, I mean the number of people is actually going to go down.
So, there it is, the big question.
How on earth can the world be getting more crowded overall, while so many places are getting emptier? It sounds like a total paradox, right? But it's the demographic reality we're all living through.
All right, so to crack this puzzle, we've got to pop the hood and look at the engine that drives all of these population changes.
This whole massive, complicated paradox really boils down to one incredibly powerful number, the total fertility rate. People call it TFR for short. It's basically the average number of kids a woman is expected to have in her lifetime. And trust me, it's the key to understanding everything else we're going to talk about.
And this is where you see this huge global divide just laid bare. In the world's lowest income countries, the TFR is about 4.6 children. But in the highest income countries, that number drops off a cliff to just 1.5. That is a massive difference, and it explains so much. Now, for any population to just stay stable, not grow, not shrink, you need what's called replacement level fertility. And that magic number is 2.1 births per woman. Now, you might be thinking, why 0.1? Shouldn't it just be 2 kids to replace 2 parents? Well, that extra bit is to account for the sad reality that not everyone survives to have children of their own.
So this leads us to the heart of the matter. If so many wealthy, populous countries are way below that 2.1 number, then why is the total number of people on Earth still going up?
Well, the answer is this really cool concept called population momentum. The best way to think about it is like a heavy flywheel. Even after you stop pushing it, its own momentum keeps it spinning for a long time. See, past generations had really high fertility rates, which created this enormous group of young people. So even if they each have fewer kids, there are just so many of them having kids that the total population keeps on climbing. It's like a demographic echo from the past.
Okay, so that brings us to the other side of this coin. Because while that population momentum keeps the total number of humans growing, the actual structure of that population, well, it's changing in a really dramatic way. At the same time all this is happening, our planet is getting older, and I mean faster than at any other point in human history. The group of people aged 65 and up, they're not just growing, they are the single fastest growing age group on Earth. Period. And just look at how fast this is happening. By 2050, it's projected that folks over 65 will be 16% of everyone on the planet. And get this, for the first time ever, there will be twice as many people over 65 as there are children under the age of 5. That is a massive, monumental shift in what humanity looks like.
And this, as you can imagine, creates a huge economic challenge. Sociologists and economists track this with something called the old age dependency ratio. It sounds complicated, but it's really just a simple question. How many working-age people are there to support each person who's retired? And that ratio, it's getting a lot tougher all over the world.
Okay, so let's bring this down from the 30,000-foot view. What does this all feel like for real people in real countries? Well, it's creating this new kind of social squeeze, but it looks completely different depending on where you happen to live.
It's really a tale of two worlds. In some countries, you have what's called a youth bulge. There are so many young people entering the workforce, there just aren't enough jobs to go around. Then, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have places like Japan facing an age bust. So many people are retiring that they have critical labor shortages, and they're being forced to change long-held immigration rules just to keep things running.
And this squeeze is incredibly personal, too. You see the rise of what's called the sandwich generation. These are adults who are caught in the middle. They're raising their own young kids while also having to care for their own aging parents. It's just a huge emotional, financial, and time-consuming pressure cooker.
A big societal shift like this can also bring some ugly prejudices to the surface. And in this case, we're talking about ageism. As societies get older, negative stereotypes about older people can become more widespread. And a lot of the time, it's really driven by our own anxieties, our own fears about getting old, about our health, and about mortality.
So you've got these incredibly powerful, totally contradictory forces pulling the world in opposite directions. And that means societies are at a crossroads, having to make some really tough choices that are going to define what their futures look like.
And the way governments are responding is just as paradoxical as the problem itself. On one hand, you have governments focused on slowing down population growth. They're investing in family planning and education and empowerment for women. On the other hand, you've got countries in full-blown panic about their shrinking populations, rolling out what are called pro-natalist policies. I'm talking cash bonuses for having babies, incredibly generous family leave, and even state-sponsored matchmaking events.
So, how do we even begin to make sense of all this? Well, sociologists look at it through a few different lenses. Some see it as a natural process, something societies just adapt to over time. Others focus more on how our cultural beliefs, our ideas about family and what it means to be old, shape how we react. But there's a third perspective that asks a much tougher question. Who has the power here? And this is the really challenging question that comes out of that conflict perspective. It forces us to stop and ask, why do wealthy countries so often pour money into family planning programs in poorer countries instead of, say, programs that would directly boost their economies? The perspective suggests we should question the motivation. Is it really about helping, or could it be about maintaining a global power balance?
And so, that's where we are today. This isn't just a numbers game about births and deaths. This is about how we build a future on a planet that's being pulled in two completely different directions at once. How do we create societies that provide security and opportunity for the young and growing countries while also ensuring care and dignity for the old and shrinking ones? That, right there, is the fundamental human challenge for the rest of this century.